You want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Sib Ali and I'm a filmmaker. Over the last few years, I've made a variety of short films. Then I decided to make my own feature film one day because of my experiences with disability and autism. Plus, I want to do something positive for the world, like raise awareness by sharing my own story with autism. And from what I'm seeing, 4 years on from the original film idea, I'm starting to achieve a lot more than I expected in this area. It's a very interesting journey, the whole process of making the film.
Okay, so where did you start this journey then, Sib? Where did you learn your trade, your craft? What set you off on this route?
Over the last 10 years, I went to university, and after university, because I did a film course, it was a BA in video and film production. So that inspired me to make films. But there was something that happened before then, which may surprise many of you. It all started in my college years in 2006. I was doing media studies in class, and the teacher showed me this film that really inspired me, and that was called Team America. I'm not sure how a comedy done by Trey Parker and so forth have inspired me, but they did. After seeing that movie, I thought, right, I've got to start making films. And I discovered my filmmaking talents then. And 3 years on, I started university to do a film course. And I thought it wasn't easy, but I did it anyways, because I thought I need to learn my skills first.
Okay, so
And
what was
after
it
I
about?
graduate,
Pardon me. What
sorry?
was it about Team America then that lit your fire? Was it the comedy, or was it the medium? Because it's run stop animation, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's the fact that it was a funny film and it inspired me to do things I've never done before. So it was inspirational to me.
That's great. That's great. Where were you? Where did you do your media studies course? Was it media studies, sorry, or filmmaking?
It's about the university degree?
Mhm.
A university degree. Oh, I did that at the University of Wolverhampton.
And was that did you take any time out between sixth form and university, or did you go straight in?
I went straight in after college.
So you've held this idea pretty much from formative years, and you're living the dream, really.
A little bit, yes. I've still got some way to go before starting my career in the media, but every step I've taken so far has brought me closer to my goals so far.
That's great. So tell us a bit about your first film. Is the My Life on Film, is that your first film?
My Life on Camera is my first feature film, yes, but it's not my first film, if that makes sense.
So tell us about your first few films then. Can we see them? Are they on YouTube?
They're not online because they were produced over a decade ago, and I don't know where they are.
And are you tempted to remake them, or once something's been done, is that it and it's moved on?
I just think it's best to move on with these things because I made those films in like 2006 or 2008. I just think if I can't find a copy, I can't put it online.
So
And
what were those films about? Were they fiction or documentary?
let's see, one was a thriller. The second one was a music video based on lyrics of a song. And the third film I made in college was actually a short documentary about video games culture.
Right, okay. Sorry, Michael, did you have a question?
No.
No, okay. That's interesting. Thank you, Sib. So your film, tell us about what happens in your feature film.
You mean like the story or the process behind it?
Well, let's start with the story and go on to the process afterwards.
Okay, fair enough. The story, it's basically showing my life with autism because I wanted to see what I could do to make things better because back in 2016, I faced many more challenges due to disability than I do now. And I thought it was time to do something about it. And that something was to make that feature film. So the outline is this. I go to 4 locations in the UK to try and find out what the situation is like for people with autism in, say, Birmingham, University of Salford. I was invited to a conference there, Crewe, and then London.
Mm-hmm.
So by talking to people in different locations, I would get to see what the situation is like for people with disabilities. And I've learned a lot since then.
And did you have the same experience in each of the different places, or were they different experiences in the different geographic locations?
There were vastly different experiences in different locations. For example, in Birmingham, there was a lot of interest in my work after the film was released. For example, I don't know if you know this, but when you go to Birmingham New Street Station, as soon as you leave the station, there is a great tram system that runs throughout Birmingham. The thing about the tram system was, in 2016, there was a serious issue where it's not clear which path you should walk on, because there's a pavement that looks like a pavement, but is raised much higher than the rest of the surrounding pavement, because there was no sign on it saying you shouldn't walk on it. So I highlighted what happens when people get confused. I'll give you some trivia for what happened to us in Birmingham. My camera operator and myself nearly got hit by a tram due to the lack of clarity over the layout at that time.
Right. So you
So
mentioned a camera operator. How did you go about recruiting a camera operator, or did they come to you, or how did
Well,
you go about that
that's the funny
collaboration?
part. I posted various things on Facebook at the time to see who would be interested in working with me to get this film made. At that time, I didn't have much of a budget, so it had to be voluntary. But the one person who showed up for Birmingham was very helpful. Of course, since I needed camera operators in other locations, I started to do what I would say is a casting call, in terms of recruiting other people to work with me. So for example, in Salford University, I had to stick my camera on a tripod of some sort because I was about to walk on the stage then to give my speech at the University of Salford.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I had to draft in another one of my friends who was more than happy to volunteer to film me around Crewe and to show me what things were like in Crewe.
So did they know
Now,
Crewe then?
Yes, he knew quite a bit. He knew quite a lot about it, which impressed me.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about Crewe is it looked like a really grey town because you don't see many trees in Crewe. It's like concrete pavements, roads, crossings that aren't well designed, because when I was crossing the road in Crewe, it was on the same level as the road with only a couple of signs on it. So you have no idea if you're on pavement or on the road.
I think they're doing that a lot now, aren't they? They call it shared space. So it's about the drivers and the pedestrians are all meant to come to a sort of mutual agreement by eye contact about who's giving way to whom.
Oh yeah, shared space, that's another story. But I used to work on a campaign with a campaigner where I help co-direct the film and then video edit that film. This was back in 2013, if you want to look way back. And the film I edited for Sea of Change, which is the campaign I worked on, screened at the House of Lords in front of an audience of politicians and academics, from what I could gather. It was a fantastic day being in the House of Lords, because I've never even seen the place and it just looks amazing.
That's exciting then. So the House of Lords screening, was that inside or outside?
Oh, it was inside.
So tell us how you got involved with that. How did your film get selected to be shown to the House of Lords?
Okay, let's go back a bit. In
Which is where we go,
2012,
doo, doo, doo.
yeah, like a time machine. Yeah, like a time machine. Yeah. Back in 2012, shortly after I graduated, things were looking very challenging because I had no idea what to do in order to get myself in a position where I could say start my career or gain some experience. But during that time, sorry, just a moment.
Okay.
I'm getting phone calls, but I can't pick up. So what happened was someone reached out to me during that time. Sorry, let me start over because it seems things are a bit hectic at my end.
Okay.
Let's start over. After that tweet, someone reached out to me and we
Sorry, which
started a
tweet was that?
conversation. It was a tweet asking to see if anybody knows of projects I could work on to get some experience with film and video.
Right. Yep.
That person reached out to me, and that person turned out to be the campaigner behind abolishing shared spaces.
Ah. Okay.
So that person, sorry, just a second, I have to deal with this text because somebody is just texting me.
You've got
Just a
us all
sec.
on tenterhooks here now, Sib.
Yeah, I've taken care of that. Now, back to the
Okay.
story. So a few months later, I met this person in Wolverhampton to see what we could do and how we could make things work. And she was asking me for ideas of a title, ideas for the campaign itself. And so we developed the name Sea of Change for the campaign. Because all campaigns have a good name, or have to have a good name. So from here on out, I was working on various ideas. Sorry, I was working on various ideas, such as the story and what areas we should cover. And a few months later, I was having to direct those people from the phone. Just a minute, I've been told to do. Can you guys wait 5 minutes? Because I've been getting this call for a while.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
All right. Just go on mute for a moment, Sib, and sort things out.
Can I just ask, am I the only one who's getting a still picture of Sib as opposed to the moving one?
That's right. Yeah, Sib has elected not to use his video this evening.
No, I'm not.
Sorry for the delays, guys. I've just been getting a lot of interruptions at my side due to people phoning me about stuff.
Not to worry, Sib. We understand it's a trouble of the job when you're a multi-million movie maker and everyone wants your attention, or at least
It's
on the path
not
to that.
that. It's just family asking if they're okay and stuff.
Oh well, that's important too. Okay, where did we
Yeah.
get to?
We
You were telling us about Sea of
Change.
Change. Yeah.
Yeah. A few months later, I was directing people over the phone like a director does, but over the phone, because I wanted to tell them which scenes to capture on camera because I thought they would be good for the film. And so after that, I started editing this film together as quickly as I could because we had a deadline of December that year.
So were you editing whilst you were filming, or did you complete all the filming first and then do the editing after that?
The filming was completed before I started editing because I was waiting for my collaborators to send me all the film footage to me before I could edit it together. And so after that, I was busy editing for weeks and such.
So tell us about your editing suite then. What do you use to do your editing on?
I use a MacBook Pro because it's a laptop, but I can easily carry it around. I use editing apps.
Right, okay.
to edit with, plus various tools over the years, because I find these tools really save time. Like, say if you have to press a few buttons repeatedly, it can be exhausting, so use shortcuts to speed that up.
Okay, I don't know that we have any Mac editors in the group. I'll just throw it open to everybody. Does anyone want to ask any questions about editing on the Mac of Sib whilst we've reached this point? Everybody's muted, so Michael, if you're saying something we can't hear you. You just need to come off mute. I can possibly do it for you.
Let's unmute Mike and see what he has to say.
Yeah, trying to work out where the button is. It's disappeared off my thing. Unmute. There you go. Michael, fire.
Patrick used MacBook Pro and Final Cut Pro.
Do you?
No.
Yes,
I'm still on a PC of some description, which is laptop based.
Yeah. I don't think Patrick's on, is he? Is he? Patrick
No.
on? No. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. So is it Final Cut Pro that you use, Sib?
Yes, I do. It's one of my favorite editing apps because it gets a lot done more quickly compared to other editing apps. Because, for example, some editing apps are a bit slow to use because, say, if you make an edit, you have to wait for the app to render the entire video before you're allowed to make further edits again, which is a massive time waster. Whereas Final Cut lets you just cut and keep going because it handles certain things in the background.
And is that something you've made the choice on since being at university, and you're a dyed-in-the-wool Mac user now, or might you be convinced if you see something else? Right.
Pretty much a Mac user now because it's got Final Cut, and Final Cut works really well most of the time.
Have you tried DaVinci Resolve? A lot of people say good things about DaVinci Resolve.
I'm still in the middle of trying to learn DaVinci Resolve, so I can't say much on that yet.
Okay.
It's a program I'm interested in learning, but right now I'm very busy these days. So when I have some more time, I'll sit down and have a good look at DaVinci Resolve.
I haven't tried it myself, but I saw a demonstration of it, and I'm tempted to try it, not least because it's free. So that's a good thing for it.
That's the free version.
Yeah. So what was your film Sea of Change about then? We've heard that it was something to do with shared chase. Have one sip of one, it all goes to pieces. Shared spaces. How did that manifest itself then? Did you film people who were using shared spaces or interview users, or how did that work out?
We had some interviews with people who gave their piece to camera to explain what their situation is like as a partially sighted or blind road user or pedestrian who could not navigate shared space communities because they took out all the traditional traffic lights and the accessibility features like those little bumps you see at traffic crossings where your guide dog knows what to do and you can sense it with your wand.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take those features out, you make that community inaccessible to partially sighted people and blind people. So that's a great problem with shared space.
I don't know if you've seen the shared space in front of Coventry Station, where they've got those blue and white zigzags on the road.
I haven't been to Coventry, to be fair, so I wouldn't know, but I haven't seen that part.
Okay, it's worth a look. It's quite an exciting piece of road traffic marking. I'm a railway person myself, and I just don't understand how they've been allowed to go ahead with that. But that's a conversation for another day. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're almost becoming an advocate for diversity and inclusion rights, and for making public spaces more accessible to people with challenges, physical challenges, and things like that. Is that what you envisaged when you started on your filmmaking path?
I'll be honest with you, it's a bit of a surprise because when I first started making films, I just wanted to tell a great story and not think too much about social issues at the time. But that was when I was in college, because when you're in college, you don't really know too much about wider issues or the implications of your actions, if that makes sense. But when you go to university and then graduate from university, you become more aware of the world in general. And that greater awareness is what gave me the tools to cover diversity topics well.
Brilliant. Okay, and what's your next project? Is your next project going to be a diversity project, or is it going to be fiction, or?
It'll be another documentary. The story is under development. It'll be a sequel to My Life on Camera, so the sequel should be interesting because the sequel is set in Europe as it takes me to new frontiers.
And do you expect to find that other Europeans do a better job? Are you expecting to find as much difference between the European cities as you did between the UK places you visited?
To be honest with you, I don't know what to expect in terms of how European cities treat disabled people, but I am hoping I'll get the same diversity of viewpoints and how you can, sorry, let me say that again.
Okay.
Well, when I go to Europe in the future, I expect to see a broad range of views and how cities are developed for disabled people and such, because there's a lot I still don't know. So the film is in pre-production stage with the story development.
And how does it work when you have these films? You just sort of turn up and see what happens, or do you have do you script or storyboard much, or?
We do have a story outline and a basic script to develop the story, because you can't just go there without planning, because in some countries or some cities, they'll ask you for a film permit and stuff. So you've got to be as prepared as you can.
Well, I can see Michael saying something. Michael, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I went on an Open University course on astronomy. I know it's directly resolved, but the guy who was there from Holland was very surprised with how amenable we were to the guy with the Asperger's was on the course. He thought we were well in advance of anything in Europe. To me, I know it sounds difficult. The most important thing is the total quantity of the audience that you're appealing to. If you're wanting to appeal to 1% or 0.5% of the audience, you can do that, but you pay the penalty of doing that as a result.
Okay. So you're saying that by making access films, you're potentially reducing your audience. Is that what you're saying?
I am, because when I see these British deaf people waving their arms around on video, I find it incredibly distracting.
Oh, you mean with the sign language?
Sign language. I find it so distracting. I can't relate to whatever it is I'm seeing. I see the person who's waving their arms around. To me, if you want to appeal to 0.5% or 1% of the audience, do that in a separate channel. Don't try and do it in mainstream.
But then, aren't you, by saying that, just excluding people who are deaf from mainstream media?
No, if you listen to what I say, I'm saying have a separate channel for people who are deaf. But don't expect the people not to be distracted by somebody with their arms flapping around for the other 99% of the population.
It's an interesting point of view. Okay, does anyone want to add anything to that? Bear in mind you're on mute, so you'll have to come off mute if you want to add something to it.
Easier said than done, of course. We do have subtitles, which are optional on television programs, but I can't think of an easy way of doing that with deaf listeners.
Yeah.
This looks gorgeous. Well done.
Okay. You sharing, Michael, whatever it is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having strawberries and double cream here from my lady here in Derby.
Okay. All right.
Looks nice.
So we've come to 8 o'clock. I don't know, Sib, you've been talking for quite a while, so I'm going to give you a bit of a break. Do we want to take a 5-minute break and come back for questions after 5 minutes? Does that suit everyone?
I think that's, yeah, that's
Angie,
fine.
I think you're doing a bloody wonderful job. Well done, you, Angie.
Oh, well, Sib's the guest. So if it's 3 minutes past according to my clock. If we come back, are you okay for a bit of questions for a bit longer, Sib? Is that all right? Your
Yeah, a
phone's not going to
Q&A
burn
is
off the
fine.
hook. Okay, so if we come back at 10 past, hopefully that should be enough time for people to go and refresh their glasses or whatever. And I'll assume everyone's coming back, so I'll hang on for you if you get stuck behind a cat walking slowly. Oh, you just poured cream all over the place, Michael.
I have.
Okay, so let's pause it there, and we'll come back at 10 past then. Thanks, everybody.
I can only understand half of what a person's saying because only half the communication is verbal. The other half is non-verbal, if that makes sense. And so sometimes, instead of me spending possibly up to an hour to explain something, it would take me less time to make a short film that explains the concept of what I'm talking about. That depends on the situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Wave at the screen, anyone, if you've got a question to say. Michael, you need to come off mute, or I can do it for you. Hang on.
Yeah,
Hey, Mike.
okay. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. Please
I'm-
proceed.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sib, I've spent 35 years in sales and marketing, which means I've done thousands of interviews and sales transactions. You surprised me by saying that effectively you need to sit face to face to see somebody. What it seems to me is that you don't really know the questions you want to ask. Is that really the case?
I don't know what you mean by this.
Okay. I'm in the middle of doing a documentary on a guy who lived in 1540, and I'm doing a lot of research. And when I was in sales and marketing, I found effectively it's only by really knowing your customer that you can ask the relevant questions. Is it that you've really not done the relevant research to know the right questions?
I'm not sure how to answer this, but let me assure you, we do as much research as we can before we start shooting the film.
Right.
I don't know if that's what you're asking.
It is, but if you remember that Hilary Mantel did 5 years of research before she started writing Wolf Hall, how much research do you do?
I think, Michael, if you don't mind me interrupting, Sib, part of the film that Sib makes is experiencing and uncovering the stuff as that's part of the filmic experience. So, I mean, Hilary Mantel can't go and interview Oliver Cromwell and find out how he feels about the Reformation and things like that, obviously, because it's a historical context. But Sib's films are about exploring it as it is today and understanding. It's about as much a first-person point of view, I'd have thought. But I don't want to put words into your mouth, Sib.
Yeah, I've done a documentary called Invisible Me, where I interviewed the homeless people here in Birmingham. And that's very live. That's now. That's not 500 years ago. But it did research to find out what was necessary to ask the proper questions. Are you doing the proper research to ask the proper questions?
I believe we have done I believe we have done this because if you saw the film's preview, I speak for quite a while to my guests about what their experiences are like with autism, what they see is the situation in their community. I do ask some pretty in-depth questions in the main film.
Right. So what experts in that particular field have you asked?
We have tried to contact certain organizations to learn more about autism, but they did not come back to us. So I decided the best antidote, because we had a very little amount of time, you see, before we had to start shooting, was to ask several people who came forward to us about their experiences with autism, because by asking them, you get first-hand experience.
No, I disagree. You get self-selecting in experience and comments. You don't get authoritative experience and comments. You have to always be beware in documentaries of self-selecting comments, in my opinion.
So this is your view then about how a documentary maker should make a film then?
Yeah. You have to see both sides of the experience. You have to see the people who are willing to talk to you. I have about 10 people who were willing to go on camera in my documentary Invisible Me, but I asked probably 10 times that the number of people who were sleeping in shop doorways and all over the place in Birmingham. Would they go on camera? And they wouldn't. So you're influenced only by the people who are willing to go on camera. And you have to acknowledge and seek other people who are removed slightly from that experience, that they are self-selecting on their comments about the people who are sleeping in doorways in Birmingham. Now, you may have a different opinion. However, for the 10 people I have on actual film, I may have asked 50 or 60 people, will you come on camera? And they wouldn't.
To be fair, Mark, it's a very special group of people, wasn't it? They have reasons for wanting not to get on camera in many cases, I imagine.
No, I disagree. Most people in the public environment don't want to come on camera. They don't want commitment. It's only the few who self-select, who have an agenda, who were willing to go on camera. That's my experience. I may be wrong. I'm not Michael Moore.
Okay.
But
thanks, Michael, for that.
That's my experience, you know.
I'm going to give the last word to Sib on that one.
I think what we are discussing here is two completely different films and storytelling methods, because what you have just said makes more sense to the kind of films you want to make. And I think that's great for you. But for somebody like me who does not follow that, how shall we say it, mindset, I have done everything possible to reduce what you would consider bias, in the sense that if I got one person that said yes to something, I would try to find another person that would have the opposite view. Because the original plan for the film My Life on Camera was we'd have 2 guests for each location. At least that's my understanding. I don't know what you're laughing, but I'm really trying my best here.
Well, I'm not laughing. I'm smiling because effectively,
Oh, sorry.
You are empathetic with the BBC philosophy of I find somebody who thinks red is green, so I'll walk around a town till I find somebody else who thinks red is blue. In other words, it's a proportionality that effectively there'll be more people who think red is red than red is green, but the BBC then selects out those people who think that red is not red and purports to put some sort of balance which is disproportionate. If you look at if you're over in the USA and you look at the film, the broadcasters over there, they will say we're going to have somebody here who purports to be a Democrat, and they will give the Democrat point of view. But then they will also put this is a Republican, and they will put the Republican point of view. They don't put an A and a B and a green. They're more representative of what is the reality than what the BBC puts across effectively.
I think the great thing about tonight, which is we're in a very rare position to do so, is we have got visitors from the States. So I wonder if Crystal or Pedro want to jump in about American documentary making styles.
I don't know. I think, I mean, I don't know. I know you guys watch the news, so like America is a huge mess right now. But I think that the interesting thing about the States is that we have so many different outlets for news and outlets for media that you can really take your pick. And like, unfortunately, people don't always pick the right sources of news and the right kind of documentaries, you know, to watch, because it kind of goes along like their personal beliefs. It may not necessarily be the truth, but it's kind of like the kind of things that they want to feel good about when they go to sleep at night. So, I mean, I'm not a filmmaker. Like, I mean, even though I'm from Los Angeles, I've never been interested in films. I think sometimes films are a little bit biased and they kind of like miss the point. But I just think, I don't know. I can't even remember the question. I kind of went off on like a tangent. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Can I sum this up? Can I sum this? Am I live?
Mm-hmm.
It's Crystal. People
Yes.
buy newspapers that agree with their own attitudes, and always have. There's nothing new there. There's nothing new. Yeah,
and that's kind of like unfortunate. I think our media has been kind of infiltrated with a lot of lies and like a lot of bias, and it's kind of it's like spearheaded by the president. I mean, I don't want to get political or anything like that, but you know, when you see somebody in charge kind of like fueling those lies, like you tend to believe them if you like the person that's in charge. So you'll believe what they say, no matter if it's the truth or a lie. But like I said, we do have a lot of media outlets, and not all of them are extreme left or extreme right. There's quite a few that are kind of like in the middle.
But I had a home for a second home in Florida for 6.5 years, and I watched the Obama second election, and I watched Trump's first election on CNN. And my opinion is effectively, there is no such thing as biased news. It's all biased news, effectively, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because there's a human behind it. There's a human person that's like has emotion, that's putting like that sort of emotion into their writing. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit biased in a way, you know.
Or it's always biased. It always has been biased.
But wouldn't news that was created by a bot be really, really dull?
By what?
You could remove the human from the process, which is a big ask already. If you could remove the human from the news presenting process, wouldn't it be incredibly dull?
Yeah, nobody will read it. You know?
News running order itself is a subjective and a humanic thing, isn't it? It's like, do we lead with the lockdown or do we lead with the, you know? So I don't think it's possible to make it.
The important thing about the news is not what they tell you, it's what they don't tell you.
Oh Lord.
Okay, let's pull a pin in that and let's move on to. Does anyone have any other questions for Sib?
Could I ask another one of Sib, please? As I understand it, one of the problems with people who have autism is that it's hard to communicate with other people. People making films have exactly the same problem. It's all about getting your message over and that sort of thing. Do you find that having autism has given you tricks that help you with making films and vice versa?
In my case, autism has boosted my creativity over the years, but it hasn't done much for me to solve the social communication barrier. For example, when answering questions I'm not familiar with, it is a huge struggle, like the previous person. No offense to anybody, but I couldn't understand very much of what was being said just then.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, can I ask a question of
Please.
Sib about his own work in filmmaking? I mean, a film shoot can be a very stressful occasion. You've got all sorts of things going wrong. A cable comes unplugged. You get an aircraft going over when you're trying to record some sound. You've got an actor who forgets their lines. It can be a very frustrating situation. What mechanisms do you use to cope with those situations during the shoot?
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. And I'm happy to say during the production of this feature film, there wasn't much of a feud to speak of, which is a good thing. Because the people I worked with, yes, they were volunteers, most of them, but because they already had a good understanding of how to work with other filmmakers, there was less of the arguments and dramas you would typically expect to see when, say, if I'm a film director and I'm directing somebody to look at the camera or do certain tasks, the person who isn't a filmmaker might argue or not understand things. But if you're working with other filmmakers, it makes these dramas much less likely. So that's my view of the thing. Now into your specific question about how did I avoid these feuds and such. First of all, I just have a conversation with people as much as I can, because you learn what they're happy with and you learn what they're not happy to do. Because, for example, if I'm talking to a guy who says, I'm not happy filming at night, you think, okay, we'll hire him for the daytime shoots, but pick somebody else to shoot the nighttime film scenes. This way you cut out all that drama. You don't need drama, because filmmaking is already a high stress situation in my experience as it is. So you put in processes to minimize the dramas as much as you can before shooting. And again, that comes with good research and forward planning.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sib.
Right, thanks very much for your answer, Sib.
Thank you.
Can I jump in again, please?
Please.
Sure.
Don't want to dominate, but Sib, you mentioned you'd made a horror film, and that's something which really involves tremendous amount of emotion that has to be got across. Not all kinds of emotion, but at least the emotion of fear. Did you find that particularly challenging, or did you have any tricks for getting around the problem?
I'm not sure where you heard that I made a horror film, but I think maybe you got mixed up with somebody else, because horror films is one genre I don't really produce because they don't work for me, because it just doesn't work for me, that genre of film. I like travel shows and I like documentaries.
My apologies, then. I thought I heard you say that at the very beginning. I must have misheard you.
Nah, it's okay, it's okay.
You were making a horror film. How would you go about it?
If I was, you mean hypothetically, I would imagine you'd do a lot more research as to locations, because you can shoot horror films in a variety of locations. Secondly, you need to get a location scout sorted, because it's no good turning up at a random place and somebody saying, nope, you're not coming in. So you'd have to do the research, do a location scout, do research casting, so you recruit the right people to act on screen, and you'd have to do a lot of research in finding the right crew so that they get along with you and understand how to make the project. It's no good saying to somebody, I expect you to just jump in, because they're not going to know what to do. So you need to do your research, a lot of research.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more for any more? All right, hang on, Michael. Just move my mouse. Go on then.
Yeah, Mike wants to say something.
I believe Scorsese and Oliver Stone believe effectively the most important thing in a film is selecting the right cast. And they will go to great efforts in selecting the right cast. If you've got the right cast, the film just works. It flies inherently. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I agree a lot with what you're saying with finding the right cast, because the last thing you want is for a film crew to be grumpy with each other, because if everybody's grumpy with each other, things are not going to work. And it's not just personality you got to think of, it's the skill. Are they right for this part?
I'll go with that.
Thank you.
I had a question. Kind of continuing on with having the right cast, do you think that filmmakers have, I guess, a responsibility to be inclusive to those with disabilities? Like, for instance, if a filmmaker is making a movie and the person in the starring role has autism or cerebral palsy, is it important to employ somebody who has those disabilities, or do you think it doesn't really matter as long as the actor is good?
This is a two-part answer, so let's start with the first part. I
Right.
believe that you should do whatever is possible to find the right person for the job, because if they have the right skills and the right attitude, they will make the film production run smoothly. The second part of your question is, would I consider somebody who is diverse? I would consider that if they meet the conditions of the first point I was saying, because say if I have a room of 5 people, 2 of them have autism and the other 3 don't. Then out of those 2 people with autism, one person doesn't have the right, how shall I say this, aptitude to make the film, or rather understand how to work with filmmakers, and the other person with autism has the right aptitude and mindset and the skills. So I would pick that person with the right skills and the right attitude, because if you don't pick somebody with the right attitude, you will derail that film production in no time. And that's the last thing you want.
Thank you.
I'll go with that. The Dustin Hoffman scene of Rain Man in his film, Dustin Hoffman is not autistic, but he plays it incredibly well.
That's interesting.
Does he play a stereotype of what you expect someone with autism to be?
Dustin Hoffman is a very able actor. He would have done a lot of research to make sure he got it right in Rain Man. Or he fulfills the stereotype that we need for that character. Both work.
Do you have anything to say on that, Sib?
No, I think he's made some interesting points on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Gerald.
just,
Oh, hang on.
you're talking about Dustin Hoffman's film. What about the series? Excuse me, the series on TV, The A Word. That was a very good series. The kid that played the autistic kid. And in the second and third series, they brought in more and more people who were actually that way, with these kind of problems, who were able to act and do the job. So that film was doing a great service to the viewer to show the problem that the parents have with the children. And there's the one that David Tennant was in about the little girl who was screaming all the time.
So I'll just fill in for our American visitors. The A Word is a drama on BBC One. It's set in the Lake District, and it's about a family and their extended family. So it's 3 generations living next door to each other. The young lad has autism, and he doesn't go to a special school, but the father is very good at dealing with the autism, but the mum's always trying to get extra support for the child, and she's trying to get him to be seen as a non-autistic child in the world, because she thinks that him being labelled as autistic is going to hold him back. But during the course of the series, as it's developed, they've incorporated more artists who have autism in actuality.
That's right. That's exactly what we did.
That's
yeah.
really cool.
The only comment I can make is that I was on an Open University course on astronomy in Spain, and there was an autistic guy there, and he kept himself very separate, and he was provided with a guy who's supportive, and my own son-in-law is on the autistic spectrum. However, it's not stopped him getting a 2-1 degree in maths from Oxford University, even though his wife, my daughter, is now divorcing him due to lack of empathy after a 20-year coexistence between the two of them.
Okay. Jerry, I think you had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? You have to take off your mute if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, there
That's
we go. Yeah, I dispute what Michael said about the most important part of, the most important part of making a film. As most of you know, I've been in the club quite a number of years now. And to me, the most important part is the script. Your casting comes after. If you haven't got a script, you've got no film.
Okay, thank you.
I wonder what Sib thought of that, and what his view is on getting the script right before he even starts getting the camera ready.
I would quote in the line of duty, perfect. Interviews, police interviews, the writer makes them very, very compelling. Good writing.
Yeah. Okay, let's give Sib a chance to answer.
I think getting the script right is important, but if your story doesn't rely on a script, have a good outline and plan the chapters and scenes as much as you can, because I'm not great at writing scripts. That's what people who know me well would agree with, but I developed ways around this. So say if I'm rubbish at writing a script, okay, in terms of the layout, but I have some really good ideas. Here's what I do. I write down a Word document first with various headings and such to say, this is how I want the film to look at daytime, and this is how I want the film to look at nighttime. And these are the kinds of people I want to see in that scene, because I'm doing as much as I can with the skills I've got. Because the last thing I want to do is go in there with no plan and muck it all up.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there's a big difference between fiction, i.e. drama, and documentary. Documentary, you make the film from what you get, because it's unscripted. Drama and fiction, you orientate the film to what you want, because it's all in the script.
Well, I made one about a partially sighted woman, and we would discuss what we were going to show. We went to various, going shopping or in a council meeting. She was a councillor in the place in Bangor where they helped these people, or they did the reading the books, the CDs for people to hear the stories. And I was rather lucky. I would say, well, we want to show this, we want to show that, what do you think? And then say, right, go. And I was very lucky because she could talk. She was able to talk. She wasn't lost for words. So I was very lucky in that. And it did work very well. People were saying after seeing it, oh, they didn't realize how difficult it was for her, not seeing people, and people thinking she was snubbing them in the street because she couldn't see them. And they were they thought, they knew her, they thought she could recognize them. And it worked very well. I knocked it down to about 30 minutes and I went round with it, showing it to various groups, and everybody appreciated how difficult it was for this one person. But again, I say I was lucky she was able to talk. In other words, she wasn't ever lost for words, and she was passionate about what she was trying to convey. If you're talking about actors or fiction, you need to get a good crew of actors who really, and we'll go back to the A Word, that series, the spine of that series was Eccleston.
Christopher Eccleston, yeah.
Christopher Eccleston, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was the granddad, wasn't he? And he was odd.
He was odd, yeah. You could have said he was on the spectrum himself, couldn't you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's his skill. He's a brilliant actor, you know. So
I think it's interesting when I've muted you, Michael, so I can get a word in edgeways. Sorry, you can speak in a minute. I think it's interesting what you were saying. Your experiences with the lady in the cafe. That people's immediate reaction when they met her was to think that she was being rude, not that she had a disability. Dave has hearing problems, and the number of times you see people assume that he's an idiot or he's deliberately ignoring them because he hasn't heard them is really frustrating. And I wonder, Sib, because obviously we've invited you here, we haven't invited you here just to listen to us rabbit on, so let's bring you back into the conversation. How many times do you find that people make the assumption that there's this you're an idiot or you're stupid, rather than thinking, oh, what else could it be? Hearing, blindness, autism, something else?
Where do I begin with that? I've had
Sorry, that's a
many
very broad
assumptions
question.
made about me throughout my life, but you know what? I had to learn to deal with those things, because there are two kinds of people in this world: people who try and keep going forward, and people who give up at the first hurdle. If you give up at the first hurdle, you will not know what you can achieve. I mean, I experienced so many hurdles with people making assumptions about me, saying you communicate fine, when really I struggle to understand the context of a situation. Or somebody said to me, you're clumsy because you have Asperger's, or you're an idiot or something. I wanted to make this film to address many of the assumptions people make about people like me, because a lot of things I've seen in the media over the years, it doesn't seem to reflect the real world situations I've found myself in. And that's having autism, coming from a diverse background and what have you. There are loads of variables that a lot of films I've heard about don't take into account. So I think, why not make this feature film of my own? Because I want to raise awareness as well as show the reality of people from different backgrounds, because it's no good saying this guy is a computer geek or that guy's obsessed with trains, because I am neither of those things. I love films. I like photography. I like travel. I like food, because I'm a foodie on my Instagram page.
Do you disclose your autism to people before you get to know them, or as a sort of defense mechanism? Do you say you might find my behavior different to what you expect because I'm autistic, or do you leave people to ask? Or
in most cases, there's no need for me to declare it every time, because that's just unrealistic, because that's like saying you can only drive a certain car. But that's silly. You don't have to declare it every time. You just have to declare it in situations that justify it. So for example, if I'm going to a job interview, or say if somebody accepts me for a job interview, I would have to disclose that I have autism so they can put in reasonable adjustments to help me understand and communicate better to those people. But if I'm having a nice chat with my friends, for example, you don't really need to disclose you have autism, because they're your friends. They should understand you and such. At least that's my experience so far.
so how do you find that your autism has provided you an advantage over people who don't have that neurological trait?
There are a few ways I would say has given me some interesting traits. One is dedication, because I never knew I could be dedicated for 5 years to make great photos and short videos of food and places I travel to, because several people I know who didn't quite understand how to make these kinds of videos. I know people who've walked away, and here I am still going and learning new things all the time. So dedication is a strong trait for me, because I don't give up easily.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Right, we're going to go for one last round of questions then. I'm going to make sure we're definitely wrapped up by 9 o'clock. That's 15 minutes from now. We've gone on longer than I expected anyway. So does anyone have any questions, any burning issues? Michael, okay, all right then.
I know. I was a manager with a semiconductor manufacturing company, and I had a marketing person come to me, and he sent me an email, and the level of English in this email that he sent to me, I thought was equivalent to a 5-year-old's. And I reprimanded him on the level of English, not knowing that he'd been recruited with autism in that. So I was a bit disturbed that effectively, that he had been recruited, and B, that I didn't know he had this problem. But what was my biggest forethought was effectively, if he was sending out emails to customers of the company with this level of, I use the word incompetence, I was very worried of the attitude they would think about the company. What's your comment on that?
You raise a good example of things I've heard about, where, say for example, there is an autistic guy I've heard about online who is apparently a lawyer but can't understand times tables. And I'm thinking, how is this possible? Because you've raised a similar scenario where he struggles to communicate clearly in English, right?
Yeah.
And this other example I've heard was somebody struggling to do times tables, for example, or tie shoelaces.
Right.
Yet, what I would say to people like that is, there are loads of different roles in a company, like customer-facing roles, technical roles, roles you don't have to interface with customers. So what I'd like to ask about this person you came across is, was there another job he could have done within the company that did not involve interacting with customers? Because, as you say, if he was speaking to a customer with that level of English, okay, the customer would A, be really confused, and B, your company may have a poor image because of it, even though it's an understanding issue.
I can't comment on that because we were a very flat organization, as many technical organizations, sales organizations are. And I didn't recruit him. But to have a disclaimer attached to his emails might have been a good idea, although we're talking 20 years ago now, and things were very different in those days.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any other questions? Alan, you're on mute. Hang on. You have to. There you go. Try again. No, you're still on mute. I can't unmute you, Alan. You need to do it yourself.
Control A. You need to Control A.
Control A, Alan. Or press spacebar down. Still can't hear you, Alan. Sorry.
I think it's hold spacebar down. At least that's what my Mac's saying.
Right.
There we go. There we go.
A general question, but I'd like to hear Sib's point of view on this. Do you have a fully formed feeling for what your finished film is going to be like, or does it evolve during the process of making the film, particularly in editing? People often say you shouldn't edit your own films. I would hate to have somebody edit my film, but I think they probably hate it very much when I get involved in theirs. But what is the best way of going about this? And do you have the vision there at the very outset? Sid, please.
Okay, so what I'm gathering from your question is you want to know. Sorry, I've forgotten a little bit. Angela, could you help me
Yeah,
explain?
sure. So how do you feel about people editing your film? Are you allowed? Would you let other people edit your film? And also, do you know what the film's going to look like before you've finished it? How much does what it turns out to be match what you thought it was going to be in the first place?
Okay, the first part to your question is I generally edit most of my films that I make myself because it's just out of habit from years and years of previous experiences that I've built up together. And I thought, if I understand the editing process better than somebody else, why don't I do it? Because it would save me time, save me stress, and get the story out there sooner. Of course, I am open to collaboration with somebody with the right mindset and the right skill level. Because what I don't want is somebody to turn up, be grumpy, and not understand a word I'm saying with editing, because that's no fun for anybody. And the second question is, what was it again?
Does your finished film match what you thought it was going to be like when you started?
The finished film turned out differently in some areas to my plan, because things I thought were a good idea in the planning turned out not to be such a great idea. So I had to edit those scenes out. And things I shot that I thought weren't making sense in the initial planning turned out to flow better with the rest of the scenes. So you have to be open to changing the story a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit.
Does that answer those questions, Alan?
I'm not sure whether I'm muted or not.
You're good.
Okay, it doesn't say on the screen at the moment. It does. Thank you very much, Sib. Yes.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay. Any other burning questions? Anyone? No.
I'd
Okay.
like to thank, I don't know whether you can hear me, I'd like to thank you, Angie, and Sib Ali for tonight. I think you've both done really, really well. Really well. Well done, you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. Thanks, Sib, for your time.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the questions and thanks for the interesting dialogue throughout.